one of the things about our neighborhood at 1442 North New Jersey Street in Indianapolis was that there were a lot of children within the 2-block radius of my house. Because we didn't go far away from home, and we didn't go into each other's homes, because there were a lot of people who had not only parents, but of course relatives who were in those houses some of the time during the day. So we spent a lot of time on the sidewalks playing, even in the snow sometimes. Although I don't remember sleds so much. We didn't have any hills. But when we could play outside in the summer, we played there a lot. And I remember playing jacks. You may know jacks game, where you throw those things and see how many
Right.
you can pick up. And sometimes we would do, hopscotch or those simple-minded games.
Kids still play hopscotch, apparently.
That you would do on the sidewalk. And one of the big stories about playing on the street was my father, who worked for a garage and was interested in automobiles, decided he would buy a little pedal car, not only for our use, but for the use of our friends and neighbors on the street. And it was a blue, fancy little thing, and everyone thought it was just wonderful. And one of the stories of our family was what happened that morning under the Christmas tree, and the car was there, and I walked right past it and went under the tree and said, "Oh, look, bookies."
How old were you?
Let me see, maybe 6. Enough, that I knew about. And these were dime store books. But I had always liked books, and I liked them because people then would read them to me at other times. So that was always a joke in our family about the bookies. And not only did we play on the sidewalk, but we would be there watching the coal man coming, who had somehow stop and get his loads of coal and take them to our basement window and put them into where the coal bins. And then there were people who delivered milk to our front door. And so they would come along and deliver their milk. And on summer days, the ice cream man would come with his push cart, and we could buy ice cream bars for a nickel or a dime. And so my parents, or my father especially, might leave nickels and dimes so that we could buy ice cream during the day. But we didn't always play on the street. I remember in the winter, when I was about 4, I played out back where there was snow on the ground. And we had a dog named Tuxedo because it was black and had a kind of V that made it look as if he was wearing a tuxedo.
This isn't the Saint Bernard.
No, the Saint Bernard was at another later house. This was Tuxedo, and he loved to. I would crawl around in the snow, and he would tug at my boots from behind. This was our great game. And when my brother was born, who was 4 years after me, we had to get rid of tuxedo
Oh.
because that was the trend in those days. You shouldn't bring a new baby in with an older dog that's been there in the family. And I don't know if there was any good reason for this or what the psychology was, but that's what I was told. When my brother came, we'd have to get rid of tuxedo.
And that was not, this was before you were in Irvington.
Yes,
Right.
yes, it would have been 38. We didn't we didn't leave that house until the middle of of World War II.
Oh.
And we moved mostly because my father was able to he didn't own the gasoline station, which was called Shell, but he was the manager of it. And and during the war, gasoline was rationed.
Right.
So it was a complicated business to have a station in those days. And my mother helped him keep track of all the ration books that he had to be aware of, and she filled out the income tax reports.
They also rationed tires, didn't they?
But
They also restricted tires. There was a
that could have
ration.
been. I think you're right. I think you did have to have ration coupons for tires as well, because the whole idea at that time was for the sake of the military, we had to be careful of what we used, and that was another way that they encouraged us to be supportive of our family and friends who were in the service. So it was an important thing. So let's see then. I don't remember that we got another dog. We had a small dog for a while after my brother was born, but it wasn't happy with us for some reason. It was a little thing, and it lived in the house, and so somehow we didn't keep it. A friend had given it to us, and I think we passed it on to a relative. So, the one other story I have about being out in front is that the John Herron Art Institute was not far from our house, maybe 4 blocks over. And it was a famous small museum in Indianapolis. And several times a week, a student there would walk down our sidewalk and be wearing the kinds of robes that he envisioned that Jesus wore. And he would wear sandals. And he would be walking over to the John Herron Art Institute. So we would always, of course, say hello to him. Sometimes I would leave the kids on the sidewalk behind and go visit with the older people who lived on our block. And some of them, of course, were happier than others about it. But if they showed any interest in us, I remember the Delaney's. They were both older, and his wife called him, oh gosh, what was it she called him? Nitwit? In a kind of, humorous way. And so I would go in and chat with them and sit in front of the pot-belly stove that they had in the living room to keep the little house warm. And in the summer, they would sometimes let me go out and do things in the yard with him. But I became great friends with the Delaney's, and I remember vividly, after we left that neighborhood, going to a nursing home and seeing her there and being very sad because, of course, she was not that well off. So, what other kinds of things would you like to know about the neighborhood? Oh, one of my oldest friends, who is still living, lived in an apartment house next door to me. She was a couple of years older than I was, but she was an only child. And so I would often get invited to go over. That's the one place where I went inside. I was invited to go over and play there with Charlotte.
Okay, well, I was just going to ask you if that was Charlotte.
Yes, that was Charlotte, my oldest friend. And I was later in, we separate, and she and I walked around the neighborhood a lot. One day we found a little bird, a little blue bird that was hopping along by itself. And we said, oh, we've got to help that bird. And so somehow we decided to take it with us. And I don't remember what we did with it, to tell you the truth. Whether we just took it over to some other neighborhood or found somebody who had a bird feeding place or what. But I remember picking up the little bird and looking after it for a while. Now, one time I got in trouble with some high school boys who lived on the block. They wanted us to come inside, us younger girls. And of course, we were warned that we were not supposed to go inside anybody's house. So that was, even though they tried to get us in, we resisted. So that was one of the unpleasant things about living there. And I was born at home. And that was not unusual in those days, although they did try to plan that you got to the hospital in time to have the children. But in this case, evidently, my mother waited too long or something happened. And I was born at home, and so our family doctor had a son who was a doctor. And so he came to our house and took care of me there right after I was born. But I don't know if I ever went to the hospital at all, because of course they already had a crib set up for me, and I stayed upstairs. This was a 2-story house in a double. So there were 2 families living, one on one side and one on the other, but we both had 2 stories with the bedrooms and the attic being on the top level. I haven't seen that neighborhood or that house or any of those places for a long time. But I remember when we left to move to, where did we move? We moved to the other side of town, which was Irvington, and now what was I going to say about that? And so I was very sad to leave my friends behind in school, because I got up to the 3rd grade at school number 27, and I walked to school. And we were taught very carefully how to cross at the busy corners on the way to school. And of course I had friends that I was sorry to leave, teachers especially that I was sorry to leave. But I left school number 27 to go to Irvington on the other side of town to school number 57.
Okay, that's it. That's 15 minutes.